Good morning. Welcome to the United States Sports Academy and our weekly edition of Sports Talk. Unfortunately, Dr. Ogden couldn't be with us today, so I'm going to sit in for him. My name is Dr. Steve Butler, and I'm the Dean of Academic Affairs at the United States Sports Academy. With us today are Dr. Bret Simmermacher, our Chair of Sports Coaching, and Dr. Tim Foley, our Dean of Student Services. Our titles aren't the real reason we're here today. The real reason we're here today is because we're all baseball players and huge baseball fans, and one of our favorite things we hear every year is pitchers and catchers report, and that happened over the weekend. And most major league teams, the regular position players are reporting this week. So we're going to have baseball again here in the very near future. In fact, I went to a college baseball game last night. Saw my alma mater Auburn get beat by South Alabama 7-4, and I'm going to tell you right up front that it was not baseball weather. It was really, really cold. It was about, the temperature at the first pitch was 36, and I'm not sure what the wind chill was, but it was too cold to play a baseball game and certainly too cold to watch a baseball game. But what we're going to talk about today is with the start of the new season, some of the things that we can look forward to as the new season approaches. We're not going to be like the normal sports talk show and make ridiculous predictions before we have seen anything that's going on. But we're going to talk about some of the milestones that could happen in 2015. We're going to talk about the things we'd like to see happen in 2015. Well, of course, we'll talk a little bit about Alex Rodriguez, because when you talk about milestones and numbers of all the active players right now, he's pretty much at the top of the list in all of the offensive categories. We won't talk about a lot of milestones when it comes to pitching, because there really aren't a lot of milestones that are approachable this year. In fact, I heard one guy on the radio last week, I think it was Buster Olney, who's one of ESPN's baseball experts, say that he thought Tom Glavine was going to be the last 300-game winner that we'd ever see in Major League Baseball. If you look at the list of statistics for Major League Baseball and starting pitching, there's virtually no active player anywhere in the top 50 or even the top 100 in most of those categories. The guys, Cy Young, Walter Johnson, Christy Mathewson, those guys pitch like every day back in the dead ball era. So that, Cy Young's 511 wins is, I think we will all leave this earth with that still being the record. So, Bret, as we get ready for the start of the new season, what are some of the things that you'd like to see happen this year?
I'd like to see the competitiveness we've seen in the American League. I'm an American League guy myself, having grown up around Cleveland and Detroit, and a guy from my hometown that played with the Detroit Tigers. So I follow the American League. And I feel like 13 of the 15 teams, other than the Astros and the Twins, probably have put themselves in pretty good position to be in the playoffs with trades and whatnot throughout the off season. So I'd like to see that competitiveness continue, and it has been over the last couple of years, because I think 8 of the 15 teams have been to the playoffs in the last 2 years. Last year, 17 out of the 30 teams in Major League Baseball on September 1st were within 5.5 games of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to see that competitiveness continue this year.
I think the extra wild card a couple of years ago has added more teams to that mix. Give more fans a chance to see what's happening going down the stretch and going to games that actually mean something.
Right.
And it doesn't appear that we've reached the point in baseball yet where we have in football and basketball, where at the end of the season, some teams are just basically not trying anymore. Mm-hmm. We have the September call-ups, and we give players rest. And once you've clinched the playoff spot, you kind of set up your rotation for the playoffs. But one of the interesting phenomena in the last 10 or 15 years, it seems to be, and the stats will bear this out, that the teams that have to fight all the way to the end actually enter the playoffs with more momentum than the teams that may clinch early and kind of coast into the playoffs.
I agree.
How about you, Dr. Foley? What would you like to see happen this year?
Well, I'm really interested to see how Mike Stanton comes back from getting hit in the face with the fastball. I'm not sure. Probably doesn't matter because he won the lottery in the offseason. But I'm interested in seeing how he does. And also, the 3 young superstars, obviously the best player in the world, probably Mike Trout. But also Bryce Harper and Yasiel Puig. I know you mentioned him. We were just talking about him, but he's one of the most exciting players. But again, pitching rules, and we all know what happened at Washington in the offseason. Interestingly enough, we were just talking about pitching, but I saw a stat where 20 years ago, there were 50% more guys now than there was 20 years ago that they're throwing 95 plus. However, it seems like it's harder to keep them healthy. So you figure that out. Again, we talked about Ichiro, possibility for 3,000 hits in
a very short
few years.
Yeah.
And you put those Japanese totals and you got quite a few number of hits. And then also what was done out of the West with the Padres. One executive had this comment: in my baseball life, I've never seen a team make such a monumental improvement as the Padres did this offseason. Again, you talked about the whole new outfield, very large ballpark out there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Brett mentioned the Astros, but we had this discussion in one of my graduate classes a couple weeks ago. Last year, the Astros had the worst record in baseball, and they made the most money in baseball.
Wow.
So if you're the general manager, did you have a successful season or did you not have a successful season? And I would argue that depends on what your marching orders were from the ownership.
Correct.
You can look at it one of two ways. Either you had a horrible season, but most of the baseball insiders think that the Astros have a good young nucleus and they're building for the future through the draft and through trading away some of their established players and getting additional young players in return. One thing I'm really interested to see is how well Alex Rodriguez comes back. I have a little bit of a different take on Alex Rodriguez than most people do, I think, because I have a good friend who was my son's band director when I lived in Evans, Georgia, Lakeside Evans High School. I actually lived in Martinez, but they went to high school in Evans. And the band director there became a really good friend of mine, and he coached in the Miami area at the same time A-Rod was playing in high school. And he said unequivocally A-Rod was the best kid he ever met. Said he just immensely talented, was not arrogant, didn't have any ego, was always helping other players out. So I'm interested to see how he comes back. We were talking in one of our offices this morning about how it's kind of fascinating that somebody with incredible talent, and I think the talent is inarguable, one of the most talented players that's ever stepped on the baseball field, can be so insecure.
Oh, just his mannerisms and the way some of the stories that you hear, like you spoke of the story with Joe Torre about, interacting with the team and, grabbing a cup of coffee. And he was more looking at the cup of coffee than actually getting in there. But and maybe that's his naivety from signing at 18 years old and going away from home. There's a lot of variables involved with those kind of things when kids sign out of high school and aren't as mature as the college athlete that went to 2 years of junior college or even a year and got drafted, or went 3 years out of 4 at a Division I school or Division II, and then made themselves eligible for the draft. They're still a little bit more mature than an 18-year-old. So
and A-Rod, everybody talks about him being all about A-Rod and not being a team player. He made one of the most unselfish moves in the last 15 years. He was on his way to becoming the best shortstop in the history of baseball, and for the team, he moved to third base and let Derek Jeter stay at shortstop. And early on in that arrangement with the Yankees, you heard a lot of people say that the best shortstop in baseball was playing third base for the New York Yankees.
Right.
Tim, you mentioned Ichiro before. Talk about some of the milestones. Ichiro is right now sitting at 2,844 hits. And he also has 487 stolen bases, so he could reach 3,000 hits and 500 stolen bases this year, something that not a lot of players have done.
I guess that's a log.
Yeah,
that's a lot. I would have to say.
And the interesting thing is, this will be his 14th season in Major League Baseball. So to get 3,000 hits in only 14 seasons. I'm not a math major, but that's over 200 hits a year, no matter how you figure it. And he had that one string of 10 years, which was incredible.
Phenomenal.
The 200, of course, he broke the George Sisler's record with 262 hits that 1 year. But he just had that string of 10 years in a row with over 200 hits.
Unbelievable.
And if you throw in his hit, like you mentioned, if you throw in his hits from the Japanese league, he's probably either has passed Pete Rose or is getting close to passing as the all-time hits king.
Speaking of George Sisler, I played with his grandson in South Alabama.
Cool. Okay, some of the other milestones we got possibly in 2015. Of course, Alex Rodriguez has scored 1,919 runs, has 2,939 hits, 654 home runs, and 1,969 RBIs. So he could end this season with 2,000 runs, 3,000 hits, 2,000 RBIs and could be third or fourth all time in home runs. He's only 6 behind Willie Mays right now, and so we'll see how that goes. I know the Yankees. There's some.
I think a lot of that's going to depend upon the pressure that's put on him from the media. He's going to, and he received that when all this came out. The pressure that he received with the PED use and all those things that are going on.
I think the way he makes that all go away is be the player of the month for April. Hit about 8 home runs, drive in about 20 runs.
It'll be quiet.
Hit 360, and everything else gets forgotten really quickly.
Yeah,
because they don't have a lot of offense right now.
no,
And they, I think they need to give him a good look and see what's going on. I heard one of the guys on the radio yesterday say that $61 million is a good tiebreaker when it comes to deciding who you're going to play at a certain position.
yeah.
When I was looking at the milestones that could be possibly passed, one name that kind of surprised me. It doesn't seem like he's been around that long, but Bobby Abreu, who has 574 doubles and 1,476 walks, so he could reach 600 doubles and 1,500 walks this season. He's kind of quietly accumulating some pretty impressive statistics. The other one, of course, Albert Pujols. He's got 561 doubles, 520 home runs, a 588 slugging percentage, and a 991 OPS. So if he had a good year, he could join that exclusive club that right now only has 4 players with over a 1 OPS for their career. And of course, those 4 are Ruth, Gehrig, Bonds, and Williams. But
That's okay, club.
Yeah, that's not a bad. That's
Not a bad club to be in.
And then David Ortiz, 466 home runs. I know he hit more than 34 home runs last year, so he could end the season with 500 home runs. I think when we were kids, 500 home runs was a magic number.
Yeah.
There was up until Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Rafael Palmeiro, those guys. Nobody hit 500 home runs ever. Did not make the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to see some of these guys like Jim Thome is coming up on the list, and there's never been even a whisper of him having any thing to do with drugs. So we'll see how that is taken into account. One of the guys who I think should be in the Hall of Fame is Fred McGriff, who has 492 home runs, which is tied with Lou Gehrig all time. And he had a stretch. I can't remember how many years in a row it was that he hit 20 home runs. That I believe is a major league record.
Yep.
Like 13 or 14 years in a row with at least 20 home runs or 30 home runs. There's some major league record he holds there. And again, he's another player who absolutely not even a whisper of steroid use. The only 2 pitchers that have a chance to reach a milestone this year are Joe Nathan, who has 376 saves. So if he has a normal year, he'll pass 400 saves, and that'll put him 13th on the all-time list. And then CC Sabathia for the Yankees has 2,437 strikeouts. So if he stays healthy, he's a lock to finish the season with over 2,500 strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things, some of the milestones we have. We talk about milestones and 500 home runs and those kinds of things, which kind of lead to Hall of Fame voting. My personal opinion is, and I wrote an article about this in the Sports Digest last year, or maybe it was the year before, my personal firm belief is if you have to ask, is so-and-so a Hall of Famer, then the answer is no.
Right.
Because it should be obvious. And there's a group of first-time eligibles on the list for the class of 2016. I'll just go over them real quick. Gary Anderson, Brad Osmus, Luis Castillo, Jim Edmonds, Troy Gloss, Ken Griffey Jr., Mark Grusolanic, Jose Guillen, Mike Hampton, Trevor Hoffman, Jason Kendall, Mike Lowell, Russ Ortiz, Chan-Ho Park, Mike Sweeney, and Billy Wagner. Now, the obvious one there is Ken Griffey Jr.
Ken Griffey Jr.
I think
Griffey.
that's a lock. We don't really need to discuss that anymore. The interesting one in my mind is Trevor Hoffman.
Yes.
Because he's second all-time in saves behind Mariano Rivera. He's actually won a Cy Young Award.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hall of Fame has been reluctant to put relief pitchers in on the first couple ballots. Raleigh Fingers is in, Goose Gossage is in, but they both waited several years before they got in.
Well, I know one that will be in a couple of years. Sure.
We got that down in 2019. There's a fellow named Mariano Rivera.
If he doesn't get in the first ballot,
we were joking earlier that anybody who doesn't vote for Mariano Rivera should lose the right to vote.
They should.
But then I'm reminded that 43 people didn't vote for Willie Mays. So that tells you something about the IQ of the people voting for these awards. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Trevor Hoffman. I don't think any of the rest of them are even worth considering. I personally think Trevor Hoffman's a Hall of Famer, but we'll see how that goes. Next year in 2017, we have Vladimir Guerrero, Manny Ramirez, and Ivan Rodriguez. You know, there was some talk early in his career that Ivan Rodriguez was the best defensive catcher that ever played the game.
Mm-hmm.
I like all three of those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, Manny Ramirez, even his young days with Cleveland, wow, what a hitter. I mean, I know all the other stuff with the performance enhancing. And I was talking to you about Vladimir Guerrero. I had no idea that he was a .317 career hitter with him hitting base, swinging at anything. That's amazing.
Between the circles was a strike zone.
Yes.
Yeah, I was actually at a game once where I saw Vladimir Guerrero hit a home run off a ball that hit about 6 inches in front of home plate. hit it on the bounce. Yeah, Manny Ramirez, I think, is going to pay the price for that, you know, in the Barry Bonds. That before Albert Pujols came along, the Tim Kurkjian, Buster Olney, and Jason Stark, the three big baseball gurus on ESPN, they were all talking about him as one of the greatest right-handed hitters of our generation. He raked when he was with the Indians.
Yeah,
he did.
He did. And in 2018, we have Chipper Jones, Jim Tomei, and Omar Vizquel. We've already talked about Jim Tomei a little bit. I think they're all three locks.
I do too.
Omar Vizquel was amazing. And you almost had to see him play to watch what he could do with the glove. And he was good.
Well, if you didn't watch, you can see it on
Sports Center.
Sports Center that night.
And on Baseball Tonight, the web gyms.
Right.
I personally think he was better than Ozzie Smith. And Ozzie Smith's in the Hall of Fame. And Omar Vizquel, you just mentioned, has 2,930.
Yeah, so not bad.
It wasn't like he was
just the defense.
Yeah, he could have hit 12. 0-1-2 and started for most major league teams because of the way he played defense. But he had 2,900 hits. So, you know, I think those three are locked. And then 2019 we have Roy Halladay, who's kind of an interesting case because he's a multiple Cy Young winner, multiple no-hit pitcher. And then we have Todd Helton and Andy Pettit. And interestingly enough, when I wrote that article about if you have to ask the question, the answer is no. Those are the two examples I used for, in my opinion, really, really, really good players, but not Hall of Famers. And then, of course, we've already talked about Mariano Rivera. That one, that they really probably shouldn't even vote on that one. They should just open the doors and give him the keys to Cooperstown and let him in.
Right.
Okay, we got about 1 minute left. So. What's going to be the best thing that happens in Major League Baseball this year? So just open it up and
I want to see if Kansas City can repeat the year they had. You know, all those guys, when you throw in 97, 98, 97, 98, I mean, it seems like they have a pretty good chance. But that playoff game last year, was it the one game versus Oakland, was just, it was amazing. It was amazing because it kind of went against the movement of what you do with the Moneyball, you know, Moneyball. And I just want to see what they do again this year.
Everything the Royals did in that game was the exact opposite of what Moneyball is all about.
And mine is along those lines. Who's going to be the next Kansas City Royals? Because I think every year there's somebody that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That no one was thinking of, and it could be the Twins or the Astros or somebody. Yeah. Where people step up and play.
I was a season ticket holder for the Giants Class A team in Augusta, Georgia for 5 years, so I know several of the players on the Giants, and I became a Giants fan through that. But I know going into this season that the Giants aren't going to win because they only win every other year. They won in 2010, 2012, and 2014. So this year they probably won't even make the playoffs.
Off year.
Like they did in 2011 and 2013. Well, baseball season's here. The Daytona 500 is this Sunday, so all is right with the sports world. We got baseball and NASCAR going, which is two of my favorite sports. And we encourage all of you folks to keep sending in your ideas for what we should talk about here on Sports Talk. We're here every Wednesday morning at 11:30 Central Time. We know for some of you, since we have students in all 50 states and 7 foreign countries, and maybe 2 o'clock in the morning where you are. But we appreciate your emails. We appreciate your tweets. We appreciate your comments on Facebook. And remember, if you want to send an idea for the show, it's sportstalk@ussa.edu. We hope you have a great week and get out to those ballparks and support your favorite baseball team. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.